about women in combat. Here with me now is a woman who served in combat, a former Black Hawk helicopter pilot in Iraq, a Purple Heart recipient, Democratic Senator Tammy Duckworth. It's nice to see you in person.
Yes.
Thank you so much for being here. I want to start by asking about Pete Hegseth for Defense Secretary. He's a retired major in the Army National Guard, Bronze Star recipient. He served in Afghanistan and Iraq. He has degrees from Princeton and Harvard. You say he's deeply unfit and wholly unqualified despite those credentials. Why?
He never commanded a unit. He never commanded a company, let alone battalions, brigades, or whole armies. He was a platoon leader. He served at a very low level in the military. And we're talking about an organization that is 3 million servicemen and women and civilians and a budget of over $900 billion. He does not have the experience to run an organization of that size. So just based on those requirements alone, he is unqualified for the position.
You are, as I mentioned, a combat veteran. 20 years ago last week, you lost both of your legs when your Black Hawk helicopter was shot down in Iraq. I want you to listen to what Pete Hegseth has said about women in combat.
I'm straight up just saying we should not have women in combat roles. It hasn't made us more effective, hasn't made us more lethal, has made fighting more complicated.
What's your response?
Well, he's wrong because the women have made us more effective. In fact, our military could not go to war without its 223,000 women who serve in uniform. We would have an ineffective military that was not capable of deployment if we were to pull out all the women and say you cannot be in combat. For those women who are in roles such as the infantry or Navy SEALs, those women have met the same standards as the men in order to be assigned to those positions. So again, this shows that Mr. Hegseth is not qualified for the position because he doesn't understand, apparently, even after having served, that women are actually vitally important to an effective military. And with the recruiting challenges we're having right now, if we were to pull all those women out and say you can't go into combat, we would face a severe personnel crisis in the military.
I want to turn to another pick, and that is Attorney General. Pam Bondi is President-elect Trump's second pick for Attorney General. She was a prosecutor. She spent 8 years leading the Justice Department for one of the largest states in the country, the state of Florida. Is she qualified to be Attorney General?
I think she might be, but I'd like to do my job, which is advise and consent in the Senate and have a conversation with her before I have that vote. And I think that's all we senators are saying is, let us do our job, send these people to us, we will ask the questions, she will have a hearing, and then we will vote. And we'll take a look and see whether or not, my conversations with her show that she's qualified or not.
You say advise and consent and to spend time understanding the nominees, which is understandable. That's your job. There's some Senator Marco Rubio, for example, you served with him. Doug Collins was in the House.
Yes.
Are those two that you feel comfortable saying now that you'll vote for?
Well, I haven't talked to them recently. I'd like to know if, for example, Congressman Collins is going to back a movement to privatize the VA. I am jealously guarding the well-being of the Department of Veterans Affairs. That's my primary care. I go to my own VA for my own health care, and I need to make sure that VA will be there to keep America's promise to her veterans for the long term. And privatizing VA, which is something that Donald Trump tried to do with his shadow VA cabinet that he had in his first term, is not something that we can return to. And so that would be my question for Doug Collins is, what kind of VA secretary are you going to be? One that looks out for the veterans or one that looks out for Trump's business interests?
What about Marco Rubio for Secretary of State?
I look forward to talking to him. Marco Rubio, you have strange bedfellows and you have strange alliances and stuff. When I was trying to get my daughter, permission to get my daughter onto the floor for the first time before I gave birth to my daughter, Marco Rubio came up to me and said, Tammy, I will back you every step of the way because I wish I could have brought my kids onto the floor as well. And so we have a friendship. We've served together. I look forward to talking to him to see what he's going to do and what his policies will be.
Okay, let's turn to the Democratic Congresswoman, former Democratic Congresswoman Tulsi Gabbard, who the president-elect tapped to serve as Director of National Intelligence. She's a critic of U.S. intelligence operations. She has promoted Russian propaganda. Your fellow Democrat, Debbie Wasserman Schultz, called her, quote, likely a Russian asset. Now, you and Tulsi Gabbard are both veterans. You served with her in the House. What do you think of her?
Well, I think she's compromised. I think by going to Syria and basically backing, a brutal dictator there. Russian-controlled media called her a Russian asset. So I do think that we have a real deep concern whether or not she's a compromised person. And frankly, the U.S. Intelligence Committee, the U.S. intelligence community has identified her as having troubling relationships with America's foes. And so my worry is that she couldn't pass a background check.
So, you are a Democrat. You are in the minority now in the United States Senate. If she can find the votes among Republicans likely to get confirmed, it sounds like that would worry you to have her in that job.
Very much so. She has no intelligence background whatsoever. When she was in Iraq, she was a medical records clerk E4, below the rank of sergeant. Her second deployment was actually to Kuwaiti Naval Base, where she only spent 3 months training the Kuwaiti military. And I don't know of any intelligence work that she has done. So she is, in terms of the intelligence community, very unqualified. Plus, she is potentially compromised and could be, and there are questions about whether or not she is now a Russian asset.
Do you believe that she could be a Russian asset?
I think that she is someone who is wholly backing and supportive of Putin, and I worry that she will not have America's best interests at heart.
I want to just quickly, because you've said about several of the nominees that they're not qualified, but I just want to kind of give the perspective of Donald Trump and the people who put him in, which is he wants to put people in who are disruptors into these agencies to really change things up. So just to play devil's advocate, when it's advising consent, is there something to be said for the American people voted for him for this kind of government and let him have those people who are going to disrupt?
No, that's our system of government. We have checks and balances. We want people who can run those organizations. They can be disruptors, but they can still run those organizations. The VA is a good example. The VA has been having a terrible issue with their electronic medical records program. Hopefully, Doug Collins gets in there and is a disruptor and does something with that. So there are ways to be disruptors without actually putting people who have never run an organization larger than a platoon to be Secretary of Defense.
I do want to ask one question about something that's happening in the building of the Capitol, now on the other side where you used to serve in the House. House Speaker Mike Johnson said this week, quote, all single-sex facilities in the Capitol and House office buildings, such as restrooms, changing rooms, and locker rooms, are reserved for individuals of that biological sex. This is, of course, because the first transgender member of Congress, Sarah McBride, was just elected. Republican Congresswoman Nancy Mace is leading the charge to prevent her from using the women's bathrooms. What's your reaction to this? And broadly, how should Democrats be approaching this issue of trans rights?
Yeah, I think that we need to make sure that people are people. And frankly, I think that we have so much other to worry about, and we have, budget deficits. We have crisis all around the world. We have a humanitarian crisis going on in Gaza. We have Ukraine. Russia is making headway there in its illegitimate invasion of Ukraine. We have issues here in this country, and yet she's worried about one member of Congress using the bathroom. Number one, I think her position is disgusting and wrong, but I also think that we have a lot more to worry about than where somebody goes to pee.
Well, we'll leave it there. Thank you so much for coming in. I appreciate it. Good to see you. And have a happy Thanksgiving.
Thank you.
You just heard